Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 6 of Under the Shell, presented by Terrapin Sports Central. Today's episode, we will be sitting down with former Maryland quarterback Scott McBrien and previewing the upcoming slate for this week. I'm your co-host, Cavit Ireland, joined by
Sam Jane,
Brendan YSL,
Michael Big Mike House.
Let's get it going.
This week's guest started at quarterback for the Terps from 2002 to 2003, winning the 2002 Peach Bowl MVP and 2004 Gator Bowl MVP with the Terps. He has the 6th most passing yards in Maryland football history and the 4th most passing touchdowns. He spent time playing for NFL Europe and the Canadian Football League. Give it up for Scott McBrien.
One really interesting thing about you is that when I was doing some research, it sounded as if baseball was kind of this thing, your dream almost, in terms of that was what you wanted to do professionally. Can you tell us a little bit about how that transition to football really started, where you decided, well, maybe football is for me and not baseball?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it was more of me just being a wimp. I didn't want to play football early on, right? But I kind of discovered that I had somewhat of an arm. So I decided to take that to the baseball field. I did fall in love with baseball as a kid, right? Grew up playing baseball at for a lot of different teams here throughout Montgomery County, and obviously played with my school buddies and played on different select teams and met a lot of other guys playing baseball. And, I kind of developed into this baseball player, with an arm at that age, right? We're talking in, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. So I took that to the pitching mound, and I was fast too. And, I just loved playing the game of baseball. And, my family, my father, threw me into the game, and he was a baseball guy, and he was playing softball at the time. So introduced me to the game, and, I did fall in love with it. I had tried getting into football, at that age. And, I don't know if I was too young or what, maybe I was. And I just didn't want to hit anybody, didn't want to buckle a chin strap, didn't want to put a helmet on. And so I didn't really get to the football field till my later years. But, obviously once I got into it, and I would say nowadays it's kind of late getting into it. I didn't get into it till I was about 11 years old. Nowadays kids are playing at 6, 7 years old. So, but back then I was 11, and, from the moment I buckled the chin strap at Maplewood Boys Club when I was 11 years old, I fell in love with the game of football, and I never looked back.
And then you didn't originally start your football career at the University of Maryland. You transferred from West Virginia. Kind of what went into that decision to transfer over?
Yeah, a lot went into that one, Michael. Coming out of high school, I went to DeMatha. I actually went to Good Counsel for a couple of years and then transferred to DeMatha. But, coming out of DeMatha, I only had one offer. So I didn't have a choice, right? I wanted to go to Maryland. Obviously, I grew up, a big Terp fan. Grew up going to Maryland games as a kid, and I always loved following the Terps. And I was a huge Maryland guy back in the day, and I wanted to be a part of College Park and the Maryland football program, but I didn't have the opportunity, right? So I had one college offer, and that was West Virginia, and I ended up taking it. And I will admit, I went up to Morgantown during my visit, and I did fall in love with the football environment, right? That's a college town. That's a football town. And I fell in love with Morgantown. And most importantly, I knew that they wanted me, right? And that was important to me. That was important to my mother, my family. They wanted me. And so I ended up taking them up on the offer. And I enjoyed my time in Morgantown. Getting into the reason that I left and came home, there's a lot to it, but mainly, the coach that recruited me, Don Nealon, retired. I'll never forget. I started the Syracuse game my freshman year, and we ended up losing that game. It was a heartbreaking loss. And in the locker room, he said, "Hey, I'm retiring." So that was a gut punch. He was one of the reasons that I came to West Virginia. So, and one of the reasons why I left, and I had an opportunity to come home and play in front of my hometown, my family, my friends, and come home and play at University of Maryland. So I took full advantage.
Yeah, so obviously you transferred. Transfer portal then is way different from the transfer portal now. So what was that process like, and how did coaches reach out to you, and what was your experience?
Yeah, I wish I could have played right away. Might have had a few more records out of College Park, but I had to sit out the full year. And actually it was great because it was a good learning experience for me because the quarterback at the time was Sean Hill, who was a senior at the time, and I got to learn behind him. I didn't have any pressure. I didn't have to play right away. Didn't have to get thrown into the fire. I had a full season to really learn from him, study the playbook, study the offense, get reps in practice, and really mature too, on and off the field. So I will say that as much as I wanted to play, it was the best thing for me, guys. I wanted to, it was a chance for me to really sit back with no pressure and just learn and develop and mature on and off the field. So it was a good year to kind of get under my belt, to really prepare myself to compete that following spring for the starting job. So it was the best thing for me.
Yeah, Scott. Obviously, I think coaches, if they had their way, that's what a majority of them would still hope for when it comes to the transfer portal is guys, when you're pulling a quarterback, especially being able to learn behind a experienced starter, and then once that battle comes, it's all right. Now you gotta compete, right? It doesn't really seem that's how it goes anymore, especially when you pull a kid as a freshman and they're sitting for a year. It's like I got to bolt. I got to go find a new school, and that's why you see I think a lot of hot quarterbacks transfer out. What type of impact do you think that has not only on programs but on the individuals themselves?
Yeah, it kind of goes both ways, guys. I mean, I do see both sides of it. If coaches can do it, why can't players, right? And that was kind of the thought process back in the day. Is like, you didn't want players to kind of get strapped with their hands behind their back, stuck in a program that's not a right fit for them, right? And for me, once we had that coaching change, I was stuck, and it wasn't a fit for me. Unfortunately, as much as I wanted to be in Morgantown, as much as I wanted to play for the Mountaineers and be that starting quarterback, it just wasn't the right fit for me. Wasn't the right coaching staff, wasn't the right offense. Obviously, I love my teammates and I love the town of Morgantown, but it just wasn't a fit. So why am I not allowed to leave, right? Why do I have to waste my next 3 years in college stuck not playing, where I might be able to transfer to a different school and be able to, back then it wasn't get on the field right away, but it was like, hey, I'm going to play my final 2 years, my junior and senior year, right? I mean, that was the perfect situation for me. And it's unfortunate. It was unfortunate back then because players were not able to, guys didn't transfer as much as they do today. And guys were stuck. Really good players were stuck at programs that weren't great fits for them. And it was a shame because a lot of guys wasted their talent, wasted their college careers sitting on the sideline, right? Where I kind of took that leap of faith and I said, you know what? I don't know where this is going to go, guys, but I know this isn't a fit for me, and I'm going to do my best to kind of get on the field. And I had a really great supporting staff behind me. I had family. I had old coaches at DeMatha. I had family and friends that really kind of supported me through that decision. It wasn't me making that decision by myself because, you got to remember I'm 18, 19 years old. I don't know really what I'm doing. All I knew is that, like, I didn't want to be here anymore, right? Today, it's I feel bad for the coaches, right? Because it's all these players on 1-year deals. You don't know if you're going to have that same roster intact the following year. And I can't imagine that's got to be tough as a coach, knowing that, hey, I might have a totally different team next year due to, the new transfer rule, right? The new NIL stuff that's going on. I think it's great for kids to be able to take advantage of the transfer portal, to be able to hop around, to play at different programs. But, it's got to be tough as heck being a coach. That's for sure. I wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's crazy, especially, both sides. But interesting to see how that changes.
Yeah, so you had the great opportunity playing under Ralph Friedgen, considered one of the best Maryland football coaches of all time. What were your experiences playing under him? You have any favorite stories from the Fridge?
Ralph was great for me, and he was great for Maryland too. Before I got to Maryland, it was Ron Vander Linden, and Coach Vander Linden, for whatever reason, wasn't able to get it done in College Park. And so when he left and Coach Friedgen came into College Park, we're talking 2000, right, or 2001. They were, and I say they because I was not there, before Ralph, but we were starving to win, right? I mean, we were winning 4 or 5 games prior to Ralph coming to town, so we were hungry. We were going to do whatever it took to win, right? And Ralph was going to bring it. And he knew what he was doing. He had won a national championship under George at Georgia Tech, and went to the Super Bowl with the Chargers, Stan Humphries, and we were running that offense, believe it or not. So he was definitely an X's and O's guy, and we had not seen that before in College Park, and he brought life into that program. And it just a story to kind of that kind of brings us to full circle is my first year starting. We go to Morgantown. It's my first time being back in West Virginia, and we've got a 3-hour bus ride, right? So usually players take that time to kind of put their headphones on, listen to music, maybe sleep, and just kind of use that time to themselves. Well, I was looking forward to that bus ride to kind of sit back, relax, and not do much. And coach pulled me to the front of the bus and said, you know what, I want you to sit right next to me for the 3 hours. I'm going to quiz you, and we're going to go over this offense and the game plan. And I said, oh God, here we go. So he sat next to me and quizzed me for, no lie, 3 straight hours, meaning, hey, what's the defense going to line up to when we go to this formation? Where's this blitz going to come from when we throw 2 receivers to this side? What's your check when we see a bear defense? I mean, he went through the whole game plan, and he was going to do everything in his power to prepare me for that game. Because if you remember back then, we had lost 2 games early. We lost to Florida State, and we lost to Notre Dame, the opening game in the Meadowlands. And then we ended up losing to Florida State. So we had lost 2 games early on, and we're talking week 4. Here we are with 2 losses already. So coach was not going to let me fail, right? And I hated him at the time for that, because I wanted to chill and relax. But I'll tell you what, it was the best thing that he ever did, because I ended up having one of the best games of my year that season in Morgantown, throwing for a bunch of touchdowns, running a 20-yard touchdown, and we ended up beating them pretty good, 41-7 or whatever it was. So I was thankful, even though I hated him at the time.
How hostile? I mean, Morgantown, you hear stuff. I've never been, but I heard it gets wild down there. Like, when you came back, what was that like? Were fans chirping you constantly? Did you hear any good one-liners where, like, all your old high school, like, what was that? I mean, that shit would have been wild.
Morgantown's wild and wonderful. It lives up to its reputation for sure. A cool story about that game. That was my first time being back to Morgantown since I left, right? And obviously it was a big game for us. It was a big out-of-conference game for us, and we had already had 2 losses under our belt. And that was a big game for me, because it was a confidence booster for me, right? But my guys on my team, they knew where I came from, right? They knew kind of what I went through at West Virginia, and they knew that this was a big game for me personally. So they actually, and I was never really a rah-rah guy, right? Even though I was a quarterback, I was never one to lead huddles, meaning, being a rah-rah chant guy, getting everybody fired up. I always was the last one out of the tunnel, running out of the tunnel on the field. But I'll never forget Steve Suter and Rich Parson pulled me up to the front of the line and say, you're leading us out when we come out of the tunnel. And I didn't want to do it, but I thought that was pretty cool for them. And that was really a really feel-good moment for me, knowing that, shit, these guys are behind me 100%. These guys got my back. And, it was pretty cool leading those guys out of the tunnel in front of a sold-out crowd in Morgantown, which is, 60,000 screaming fans, not an empty seat in the house. And I'm here leading them out of the tunnel my first time back. So that was a cool moment for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you talk about, like, the environment there. What are some of the other memorable environments you played in?
Yeah, I mean, Morgantown's obviously a great one. Back then we were in the ACC. So, some of the memorable ACC venues were Florida State. Tallahassee was a big one too. And that's 80,000 screaming fans with the horse coming out on the 50-yard line, throwing the spear. That's pretty cool. We actually got a penalty at Florida State for our guys jumping on the symbol, the logo on the 50-yard line, which wasn't great for us. But Clemson's obviously great. What's that? The 30 seconds or 60 seconds in college football, whatever they call it, when they come down running down the hill. That was a cool experience for us. And then, NC State, believe it or not, NC State was a cool environment too. That was sold out as well because you had Phillip Rivers back then. And Phillip Rivers was a quarterback that we went against, and he never beat us. I mean, Phillip Rivers, there was only one school in the ACC that he never beat, and that was Maryland. And I was a part of 2 of those games. The first year was here in College Park, and then the second year was at NC State, and that was his senior day. And it was sold out, screaming fans. And I don't know if you guys probably don't remember that game, but we ended up winning. We were down 14 or 17 in the fourth quarter, and we ended up coming back to win. And when that last whistle blew, fans were throwing every beer bottle and every Pepsi bottle and everything they could find in the stands onto the field. So we actually had to have security escort us off of the field, and we were told to all keep our helmets on. So that was a wild atmosphere back then.
Yeah. Wow. And I read an article recently that talked about how I'm talking about dope environments. There's a picture apparently in your office of the Peach Bowl game, or after you guys had won that. How, like, was that just like a crazy atmosphere playing in Atlanta, like that type of thing?
Yeah. I'm going to show you guys this picture. This probably your listeners won't be able to see this, but I'm in my office here. I'm going to show you this picture. Wow. This picture is me in the huddle at Tennessee in Atlanta, and this is the first drive down at the Peach Bowl, and that was a wild atmosphere too, because you know how Tennessee travels, right? So this stadium was sold out. We're talking about the old Georgia Dome. The old Georgia Dome was sold out for this Tennessee Peach Bowl game, and the Maryland section was the end zone, and the Tennessee section was the whole horseshoe. So we came out of that tunnel and saw nothing but orange, and we shut them up real quick. We ended up winning that game 30-3, I think it was, and that was a fun night and a memorable night for sure.
Yeah, hey man, y'all dominated Jason Witten. I respect that. I hate that.
That's right, old Jason Witten. Yeah, he was a good one for Tennessee, of course, but we were hitting on all cylinders that night. That was a fun night.
So then, post-college, you go pro as an undrafted free agent to the Packers. What was your draft and pre-draft process kind of like for you?
Yeah, the draft was, for me, I was undersized, as you guys know. I was 6 foot, 107. I played in the Peach Bowl at 172 pounds, so I had no business being out on the football field, guys. Believe me. You understand why? You understand why I wanted to be a baseball player, right?
Yeah.
I mean, did I make a stupid decision or what? But, I really didn't have any expectations. I was going to ride this thing as long as I could ride it. And I ended up going further than I really thought I would ever go in this game, simply because of the lack of genes that my mom and dad gave me. No size, but they call it the oh shit speed, right? I had the oh shit speed, which means I was scared as I don't know what every time I had to run for my life. So I was pretty fast, and I could get away from defenders, and I was pretty good at kind of dancing and moving around in the pocket, which got me to kind of where I ended up. So the draft process was, obviously I trained for the combine, did all the pre-combine workouts, and I had a chance to get drafted in the 6th round. And I remember Coach Sherman at the time, who was the head coach, called me and said, hey, if we don't draft Scott Wells, who was a center for Tennessee, if he's still available, we're gonna draft him. If not, if he's gone, we're gonna take you. So that was my only shot to really get drafted. And I had some family over, but it was more of just a get together than anything. They ended up taking Scott in the 6th round, but they ended up calling me right after the draft and signed me as a free agent and said they wanted me in Green Bay. So I actually went up to Green Bay, and I actually made the practice squad. So that year it was myself, it was Brett, it was Doug Peterson, now the head coach for Jacksonville, and it was Tim Couch, who they ended up cutting Tim Couch, and they kept me. So I guess if there's any claim to fame, I did beat out the #1 pick in the draft for a practice squad spot. But that was a great year for me. Obviously, learning from the best and Brett. You don't get it much better than that, right? Obviously a Hall of Fame quarterback. I got to see how he, approaches the game on a daily basis. Got to laugh and be in meeting rooms with him and just spending more time with him than obviously he was a guy that I watched as a kid, and then from there my locker's next to him. So that was a pretty cool experience. After that season, Green Bay sent me over to NFL Europe, and that league doesn't exist anymore. But it was more of a developmental league for guys like me who didn't get reps during the year, right? And so it was a season for me to, go over to Europe, and it's all NFL guys, right? And it's just a league in Europe. So I played for the Rhein Fire in Dusseldorf, Germany, and that was a great season for me. I led that league in every single record there was, from sacks, to touchdown passes, to rushing yards, to picks, to penalties, to you name it. I had a good time over there in Europe.
You and Brett Favre sharing the interception record, I guess.
Oh, dude, I did it all. I had the longest touchdown run as a quarterback. I had the longest touchdown pass as a quarterback. I threw more picks. I threw more touchdown passes. I did it all over there. So it was fun, memorable.
Every year it seems like there's more rumors about the NFL expanding to Europe, especially as they keep adding games overseas each year. Do you feel, after playing in Europe, that a team is suitable to stay there permanently for a season?
That's hard. I will say, when I was over in Europe, I loved it, right? We didn't have the following that obviously soccer has over there. We shared our stadium with the city soccer team, right? The Dusseldorf, I can't remember the name of their team, but they were the professional soccer team in Dusseldorf, Germany, and we shared stadiums. So they'd play on a Saturday night, we'd play on a Sunday, right? And I'll never forget going to one of those games. They'd have 80,000 screaming fans there, and our game on Sunday, we'd have about 20 to 30,000 fans. So we just didn't get the following, right? I mean, we had a great following, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't like it's like here in the States, right? Or it wasn't like the following that the soccer team has. So I will say the game has grown over there since then. I mean, when I was in Europe, NFL Europe, we're talking 2005. All right. So the game has grown. It's nice to see games over there on a weekly basis. It would be cool to see more games being played over there. I can't say that NFL players want to go over there. It's just hard to travel like that. It's hard to leave your families. It's hard to be over there for more than a week. Guys look at it as more of a pain in the ass than anything else. But at the end of the day, look, this is a job and it's a game at the same time. So it shouldn't matter where you play nowadays, right? As long as you can buckle up a chin strap and butt heads, it's all you want to do.
Yeah, so you're born in Rockville, Maryland. You go to Morgantown, then back in College Park, and then you go over to Europe. Do you have any, like how'd you like living there? And also, do you have any just, kind of – because when I went to Europe, it's just, a whole different culture, a little bit, right? And, do you have any just, stories where you kind of remember where you were like, whoa, this is a bit – this is different? How'd you like living over there? And, tell us a little bit about that.
I mean, yeah, I've got a lot of stories that I probably can't repeat here on the podcast as much as you guys probably want me to. But, yeah, Europe was awesome. I wish I could have played more over there. I had a fantastic time over there. My team was awesome. I met a lot of great guys from different parts of the country, right? And, the teams were all made up of a mix of NFL guys, right? And they literally had a draft. So my team was a mix of, obviously guys throughout the league, and we just got tight, man. We got to know each other. One of the downfalls is when you put 22, 24-year-old kids over in Europe, right? And they've got some money, they're going to do some crazy things, right? And so for us, our downfall for our team was we went out 16 of the first 18 nights over there. And our record showed it, right? And but for us, we wanted to live up the experience. We could care less about playing football. We wanted to live up the Europe experience and live the European night scene and just run around the town of Dusseldorf, right? So my roommate and I at the time was a tight end, Jason Rader, who played at Marshall. He was a wild Indian, and I wouldn't say that he had to twist my arm too much, but there were many nights that I kind of wanted to kind of sit at home and do my thing, and he twisted my arm to go out on the town. So our GM pulled us in at a team meeting and said, guys, I know you guys are trying, but you guys have gone out 16 of the first 18 nights. We can't have this. So he shut that down real quick, and we ended up kind of winning some games after that. But that I will say it was probably a good thing that I wasn't over there for more than a year, because who knows if I'd be here today if I still was.
Yeah, I'm sure Oktoberfest was a little bit fun.
Yeah, it was a great experience, and it was something I'll remember forever.
Yeah, it sounds like it was quite the experience. But you also played in the CFL. So what were your experiences like in Canada, and any like major differences between just the play style and like the culture of the teams in the CFL?
Yeah, Canada was a wild game. The rules are totally different, right? It's a quarterback receiver league. Unfortunately, I was behind another Hall of Famer up there, Anthony Calvillo, who was pretty much the Brett Favre of Canadian football, right? Me playing with the Montreal Alouettes, which I love Montreal. Montreal was another town that was fantastic. And that was kind of that wasn't as cool of an experience, as obviously coming from the NFL, you're spoiled, right? And even NFL Europe, and then you go to Canada, and it's not what the NFL is, obviously. So, I didn't play a whole lot up in Canada. I sat behind a Hall of Famer. The game was fun. The town was fun. But that was towards the end of my career, and I was kind of ready to come home and make some real money at the time. Quarterbacks made the most money up there, but back then you weren't making a ton of money, and I was up there in freezing cold, buckling a chin strap, going to practice every day, not making a ton of money. I was ready to pack it in. So I will say it was a great experience for me. I was up there with Quincy Carter. I was up there with Ryan Dinwiddie. Quincy Carter played for the Dallas Cowboys. Ryan Dinwiddie played for Boise State. And then Anthony Calvillo, of course. So that was a cool experience for me. And the rules obviously are different. You're throwing every down. You only get 3 downs. You got to punt it on 3rd down if you don't make it. So field's wider, it's longer. You got another guy on the field. It's a wild game, that's for sure.
Yeah. Then eventually, like you said, you wanted to make some kind of get out of football, and you kind of decided to take the not journalistic, but broadcasting. How'd you like that, and like doing like radio stuff, for Maryland? Like, was that just kind of like a cool thing, like cool little gig you had, or is that something you became kind of like passionate about? What was that like?
Yeah, that was something that Maryland asked me to do, when my playing days were done. And me being close to College Park, it was easy for me. And I wanted to be around the game still. I still wanted to be affiliated with the program, and just kind of being back with the guys, and doing the radio with Johnny Holiday. He's a Hall of Famer. I remember him calling me saying, "Would you ever want to do this?" And I said, "Sure." So being in the booth with Johnny was awesome. I told Johnny, I was like, there might be a day where I come back once my kids are old and grown. Who knows? But Johnny's going on his 45th year, believe it or not. But the radio stuff was cool. I mean, I love being around the program. I love being in the booth on game days, and even traveling with the team, and it kept me involved, which was awesome. And during my time doing the radio at Maryland, the Big Ten Network called when we joined the Big Ten back in what year was that now? You guys might know, 2014 or 15, I can't remember.
13 or 14.
Yeah, whenever they joined the Big Ten Network called me and said, "Would you mind doing some out of conference games for Maryland?" I said, "Sure." So I ended up doing a few years of that, and loved that as well. Fortunately, unfortunately, I ended up having children back then. So I have 4 kids now. And when I had my second son, or my first son, my second kid, I had to hang it up, because it was just a tough time for me, and I had a job. We started a technology business 14 years ago. So I was trying to grow that, and I had too many things going on. So I had to hang it up on the radio and the TV front. So it was more of a hobby for me. It wasn't really something that I was looking to get into full time. I just kind of fell into it, and I love doing it, and I love being around the game, and it kept me active. And but unfortunately, I had to hang it up. But who knows? Maybe one of these days I'll get back in the booth. He still calls me every year saying, "You ready to get back in the booth?" I say, "John, maybe give me one more year, John." He calls me next year. "Hey, Scott, you ready to get back in the booth?" So he's been doing that for the last 5 years. So we'll see.
Love it. Yeah, maybe once the kids get older, you'll get back in the booth, get some more free time.
That's right. That's right. We'll see.
How much do you still follow Maryland football, or do you?
Yeah, I follow them. I follow them to an extent of, obviously Coach Loxley was, I haven't even talked about Coach Loxley. He recruited me out of DeMatha, and he was the running back coach at the time, and he wanted me to come to College Park, and he believed in me from day one. And I'll never forget, he brought me on to an official visit back in high school. Ron Vanderlinden was the coach, and he thought I had an offer. I mean, he had no clue that I did not have an offer. So my mother and I go over there. We go for an official visit, and that Sunday when we're checking out, he came to me and he's like, "Hey, you guys coming to College Park?" And I said, "Coach, we don't have an offer. Coach Vanderlinden never offered me this whole weekend." He was like, "What?" He had no clue. He was like, "No, we have an offer." I'm like, "No, I don't think you do." And he ended up going back to Vanderlinden, and Vanderlinden was like, "No, we don't have an offer for him." So Loxley believed in me from day one. He was trying to talk me into walking on at Maryland and becoming a punter. Walking on as a punter just to get me onto campus. And then his plan was he was going to put me on scout team as a scout team quarterback, and I was going to prove myself on scout team. That was his plan. But back then, my mother, single parent, was like, "I'm not paying for college. She's got a free ride up at West Virginia, Morgantown. We're going to take that." So Loxley was like, "Look, I don't blame you, but you're always welcome here." So when things didn't work out at Morgantown, Loxley was the first guy I called, and I was like, "Lox, I'm not going back to West Virginia." He was like, "Get your ass on campus now. I want you here." So Ralph actually didn't have a scholarship for me. I had to walk on and earn it. So Lox was like, "Look, I know you can beat some of these guys out. I know you can earn it. Get your ass on the campus, get enrolled in school, walk on for the first couple months." And sure enough, by end of October, Ralph pulled me in his office and he had a scholarship for me. So that's how it worked out.
That's so sweet. So how, kind of just last questions here, wrapping up. You think, obviously you said you're close with Loxley, and this year they've started to put things together, it seems like, especially with his type of culture and vision, and obviously Talia having a great year, passing you. I'm gonna tell him next press conference that if you had been there from the jump, he'd have a couple more touchdowns to break. But what do you think about them, just overall this year, and how do you see Loxley here at Maryland? What type of heights do you think they can reach?
Well, first of all, my records are long gone because I didn't throw the ball half the time that those guys throw the ball now. I wish I could throw the ball 60 times a game. We couldn't do that back then. Offenses were totally different. But no, I like what Lox is doing, man. I like how he's recruiting. I like the team that he's put together. I like the staff that he's put together. He's the right guy for this job. I've believed in him from day one. And he's moving this program into the right direction. And I think if he can continue to do this on a yearly basis, and he can keep winning, especially winning the games that he's supposed to win, I think sky's the limit for Loxley in College Park, especially with the town that we're in now. This is one of the capitals of the world athletically, right? On all sports fronts. And I think we have the talent here locally, and I think Loxley can do it. If he can put it together, man, he can get this ship rolling in the right direction, which I think he has it. It's just a matter of getting some of those bigger wins, right? Getting the Ohio States, getting the Penn States, getting the Wisconsins, getting the Michigans. If he can pull out some of those victories each year, look out. So I'm excited to see where he goes with this thing.
Well, thank you, Scott, for joining us. This has been an amazing interview, and hopefully, maybe in a few years, we see you back calling games with Johnny Holiday.
Join us in the journalism field. Come on now.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Who knows? If he keeps calling me, maybe he'll get me back one of these years.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Scott. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
All right, guys. Have a good night.
All right, going off of that interview, let's keep it with football. So, Sam, big game for the Maryland Terrapins. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so coming off the bye week, the Terps have a pretty much, I would say, season-defining game here at Wisconsin. Obviously, going into Camp Randall is going to be a tough place, but they will have their quarterback back, as Talia Tagovailoa is expected to play, according to Mike Loxley, this week in the press conference. Wisconsin, in kind of a shocking move, fired their head coach mid-season, Paul Chryst. Not usually a thing that the Badgers do, but they do have a really up-and-coming defensive coordinator, now interim head coach Jim Leonard, who a lot of Badger boosters and the athletic director were very interested and high on. He actually has turned down defensive coordinator positions for NFL teams such as the Packers, and the Badgers have really taken off since he took over the head job. Their offense is scoring better. Mike's going to have some guys to talk about, but Graham Mertz is starting to play well, living up to that 5-star status. So it'll be a tough task for the Terps, especially on the road. Mike, who do you think are some guys that Maryland fans should watch out for?
So the number one player to watch for on Wisconsin's offense is running back Braylon Allen. The sophomore running back has recorded 870 rushing yards and 9 touchdowns this season. Both are the 4th most in the Big Ten. He's also 18 years old, so he has a really bright future ahead of him, not just for his collegiate career, but NFL-wise too. And then the other guy I would say is receiver Chimere Dike. The junior receiver, he's recorded 523 receiving yards and 6 touchdown catches for the Badgers, averaging 16.3 yards per catch. So those two players, they're going to be a tough task for this Maryland defense and really put them to the test.
Yeah, definitely. And that's not even the scary side of the ball for Wisconsin. Their defense is really good. Leonard always has a good unit, but they're also getting healthier. Starting safety Hunter Wohler and starting cornerback Alexander Smith both return coming off the bye. So both teams getting healthier. And it'll be interesting to see how Leonard uses those more experienced secondary in terms of the type of pressure they want to put on Talia. One thing, though, that you have with advantage for the Terps is that the special teams unit. Obviously, Chad Ryland, great kicker, probably one of the top 5 in the country. But Wisconsin's kicker is out for the game, so they'll rely on Nate Van Zelst, who hasn't attempted a kick of more than 40 yards.
That could be a game changer.
And in a tight game, yeah, Brendan, I think that's could play a difference. I think that if you're Maryland, you really have to limit the possessions in this one. I know your offense is your strength if you're Maryland, but the fact that Wisconsin's defense is really good every year, they are solid. And then, the offense is starting to find its way. You really probably want to limit it down, keep it close, and then let your special teams and your pass rush get after Mertz. Because Mertz, if there's pass rush on him, kind of like all quarterbacks, but especially him, he turtles up, and it's usually not good. So those are 2 keys I'd look for. Limiting possessions, not getting out in tempo as fast, and then also getting after Mertz, because the Terps' pass rush has been pretty solid.
Yeah, and I want to touch on quickly the motivational side for this game. Like we talked about last week, Maryland has never beaten Wisconsin, and if Maryland can go into Camp Randall and get its first ever win against Wisconsin, it's going to be a season-defining win for sure, and really a program-defining win for Coach Loxley. And then because of that coming up, there's going to be a lot of hype behind Maryland if they can get this win. So I think Mike Loxley is going to have them fired up on that sense. And
just to go off that, like in years prior for Maryland football, this would be a game that we usually pencil in as a loss for the Terps. But this year, I mean, this is a different Terps team than years past. The defense, they've improved mightily. The offense has so many weapons to go to. So this is a test, yes, but it's going to be a real testament to what this Terps team is.
Yeah, I think Mike and Brendan, you're both spot on. I think that on Brendan's point, if the Terps win this, you're most likely looking at a ranking toward the back half of the top 25.
Absolutely. I think if Maryland wins this game, they'll be ranked.
Yeah, and to Mike's point, I think that going into this game, having the confidence of we can go in there and win this game if you're a Maryland player, I think that does a lot. And Talia's back, and he's shown he can play good. I mean, at Michigan's a better defense than Wisconsin, and he was very, very good against them. So I would, not hesitate to say that they're going to have a fighting chance in this one.
Yeah, I mean, if you looked at the Maryland schedule before the season, many people would have said that the Wisconsin game is one they're not really going to have a chance in. So the fact that they've made it to this point in the season and have a chance is still big.
And to be fair, Wisconsin's also disappointed.
Absolutely. They've had a very disappointing season.
Hey, coming off a pretty sizable win against Purdue,
who Maryland did lose to.
Unfortunately, Maryland did get a couple calls against them, and then they lost to Purdue. But Wisconsin also lost to Michigan State in a close one.
Yeah.
So they've been all across the board.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's a lot of different storylines to watch for this one. But the number one is obviously if you don't have your quarterback healthy, you're not going to be in a good spot. So Talia is playing well. They got a chance. If he's still rehabbing from that injury, they're probably done.
I mean, the fact that he was like a game time decision for Northwestern, and then obviously he didn't play, but then he had 2 weeks rest leading up to this game.
Yeah,
I think he's going to be refreshed, fresh legs. I think he should be good.
Yeah, bye week was huge. Getting just that extra, just like Mike said, that extra week of rest. Billy Edwards was able to take care of business in the gun for the Terps, but now Talia's going to take his spot back. So, gonna be a fun one this weekend, huh?
Yeah, another fun one coming up, Cav. Talk about a team that's really starting to find their way is Big Ten champs.
Yeah, Maryland men's soccer, Big Ten champs. Last week they were able to get the job done against Indiana. The Hoos, they tied 1-1 off of a Stefan Capetti header in the 87th minute to salvage the Big Ten title. And looking ahead in the Big Ten tournament, Maryland is going to play Northwestern this week. And earlier in the year, Brandon, it was not what we expected, the earlier matchup in the season against Northwestern, right?
Yeah, the Northwestern match was they went into Northwestern. It was a draw. They scored late in the game to make it a draw. And that was something that going into the game weren't expecting. Maryland's the top seed in the Big Ten tournament. Northwestern is the lowest seed, the 8th seed. So by that measure, Maryland at home should be able to take care of them. But what do you see for that game, Cav?
I see that, honestly, I'm thinking that Northwestern's going to come in. They're going to have absolutely nothing to lose. Maryland, they have a little bit of pressure on them. I mean, they got the unfavorable outcome in the regular season matchup, but if Maryland gets hotter. I mean, they didn't end the season on a win, but they ended the season on a high with that Big Ten title. So I think they're going to try to carry this momentum. The fans will be backing them at Ludwig. We know the UMD crew is always out there in numbers supporting, and see what the boys can do.
But yeah, Cav, the home field advantage is going to be a huge thing for them, and I think that on a Friday, at 7, like people will be there, people will be supporting. You got to think that that'll add a little bit of extra kick to the Terps' chances.
Yeah, I think emotions are definitely gonna be running high. They're gonna feed off the energy of the fans. They have that back in them. They're just feeding off the crowd, the chants that the crew puts out, and then they're just gonna have to show out for the fans. Really, that's all it boils down to. They're gonna have to get the job done by any means necessary. It doesn't have to be pretty. All goals count the same. It's at the end of the day, the result is what matters.
Yeah, I mean, just the one thing that Terps fans might worry about is whenever a team comes off such a big high, they have a lot of confidence, and it's easy for them going into they know they're champions of the Big Ten, going into the tournament, maybe overlook some opponents and start looking to the semifinals and the finals. And Northwestern, like you said, had a tie early in the season with Maryland. They know they can hang with them, and so if Northwestern gets off to a hot start, maybe something to look out for.
Yeah, but I think Coach Sasha is definitely going to be doing all he can to keep reminding Maryland that they cannot overlook this Northwestern team, as they drew to them 1-1 earlier in the season. And he's definitely going to keep – I have a feeling that Coach Sasha is going to keep their heads right in the right space. They're going to be locked in. They know take one game at a time. It's the postseason. You go one by one, and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and it's going to be interesting game, especially then they win that you play Indiana or Penn State. You got some teams, so it'll be a really cool postseason for the Terps if they're able to pull it out against Northwestern in their first game. Team who might not have a much great postseason is the volleyball team, because let me tell you something, this team is they've fallen apart at this point.
Yeah, Sam, the chances that they make the postseason are slim to none. Because
and Slim has just left town,
and because one part of that is the Big Ten doesn't have a volleyball tournament, And so if they were going to get in to the NCAA tournament, their only real path because of their schedule right now would be to win that, like other sports have, for example, basketball. But because the Big Ten doesn't have that, Maryland season is...
they ain't making the postseason.
They're not making the
All
postseason.
but over.
Maryland volleyball looking to gain a little bit momentum, though. 1 p.m. at home on Sunday versus Iowa. Beat Iowa earlier in the season, so they can win that game. Then they have ranked matchups against Minnesota and then against Wisconsin, who are two powerhouse programs in volleyball. So it's going to be tough for Maryland to win any of those games. But if they can win the Iowa game and get some momentum, maybe a chance. Stoll set against ranked Penn State yesterday, so that's a positive looking out for them. But unfortunately for the Maryland Terrapins, not too many positives on the volleyball side of things.
Yeah, head coach Adam Hughes, what do you think about this season in terms of, I know we've talked about this in the past, but I mean, it's really fallen apart kind of here, and I don't think that, a firing is on the table considering he was extended not too long ago, but you got to be disappointed with the lack of production, especially with people like Raynell Jones, Sam Sires, like all those type of production that come back, and they didn't really make anything of it.
They do have a lot of talent if you compare it to the entire NCAA field. They're not as deep, right? You look at a Nebraska team, they're very deep. Nebraska, if when they played Nebraska, all the kills for Nebraska spread out pretty evenly. Where Maryland had 1 or 2 people who had the majority of them, and so that puts a lot of pressure on those top talents and kind of breaks up the chemistry for the team. In terms of job, I think when you look at the Big Ten, there are so many sports that the Big Ten is really strong in and Maryland is not, right? But the coaches keep their jobs: volleyball, wrestling, track. Very weak programs at the University of Maryland, very strong programs in the Big Ten. And I think for the people who make the decisions about coaching, it's really hard because they know that really no matter what they do, it's going to take an incredible switch up of a program for them to start competing in the Big Ten because of the consistent powerhouse that the Big Ten already has in those programs like volleyball.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a super interesting point, and it'll be interesting to see what the athletic department does. But you're looking at a team that is a powerhouse, and we keep going to this.
The field hockey team.
Yeah, Mike, talk to us about those ladies.
All right, so earlier today, they advanced to the semifinals of the Big Ten tournament.
Today is Thursday.
So,
we're recording on Thursday.
We're recording on Thursday. They defeated Ohio State 5-2, led by 2 goals by defender Riley Donnelly. Both of her goals was when the game was tied, so they both put them ahead. And then again, they had 2 open netters at the end of the game to extend their lead even more. They're going to face Northwestern tomorrow, Friday at 4 p.m. Northwestern just moments ago advanced to the semifinals with a win in overtime over Rutgers. Maryland defeated Northwestern 2-1 earlier this season. Former terrific Terrapin Danny Van Rootselaar scored both goals in that game for the Terps. So it's going to be a tough one for the Terps. When you face a team twice in a season, it's hard. When you beat them before earlier that season, it's even harder. So will the Terps be able to have that same game plan going into Northwestern? It's going to be fun to watch and see.
Yeah, you talk about the one thing in the tournament, from seeding is Maryland obviously didn't get that number 1 seed because they had the share. Do you think having to go back to Penn State may bite the Terrapins in the tournament?
So the tournament is played in
off-site?
It's only in one location,
Got it.
Columbus, Ohio.
My bad.
So they beat the Buckeyes on their home turf today, which was pretty
interesting.
Pretty excited. I could say while watching the stream, you could tell there were a lot of Buckeyes fans there. Mm-hmm. So there was some sort of a home field advantage. Didn't matter much for the Terps because they still pulled through with the W. So
yeah, I think that the Terps got. If I had to have a betting favorite, just because you lost to Penn State, I feel like that might honestly give them added motivation. Yeah. They seem like they're on a heater right now, and that Maryland win or the Virginia win they had, that was just pretty dominating over a top 5 team. I mean, I was at that game, my first time watching field hockey on it, and it was actually a very, very cool environment and experience. But back to like the important stuff. They just dominated them. Like, I'm not going to sit here and profess I'm a field hockey expert, but it's easy to see when one team is just outclassing the other. And to do that to another top 5 team, it was very impressive to watch Missy Mahark's squad.
Especially on, like, all sides of the ball, offense,
Yeah.
defense, goalkeeping.
Yeah.
That Virginia game was just an exemplification of all of that. He had that beautiful Hope Rose goal
Yeah, that was
on the
sweet.
fast break. I
Mhm.
mean, that must have touched like 7 different players' sticks before it got to her. And then, of course, goalkeeping. They shut out Virginia, I believe, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
So, yeah, the Terps are just great all around. It's going to be interesting to see where it leads them.
Yeah, definitely. And watching the NCAA tournament once they get there will be a super interesting thing. I know Mike will be on that, so make sure to check out all of his coverage at TSC. But as we move forward to looking ahead, just a tiny little recap of basketball because we are getting around to that season. The women's team won both their exhibition games. They look to be in pretty good shape heading into Monday is their first game against George Mason. I will be on site at George Mason. So
You heading down?
I am.
Brilliant.
Headed down to old Virginia.
That is Big J right there.
TSC is not fun my trip, unfortunately. But
How you
anyway,
getting there?
carpooling.
Nice.
Very nice.
But anyway, they look good. Diamond Miller is looking really good, and Abby Myers. I mean, she's the only perimeter shooting they had yesterday. They went 14% from 3. She made the only 3 threes of the day, so they got to figure that out. And especially with 2 tough teams, Jordan Mason's always a pretty solid program, and then South Carolina is a monster. So that'll be interesting. And then Brennan men's obviously season starts on Monday as well. Haven't really gotten to see as much exhibition. I believe they play tomorrow. I could be wrong about that, but like an exhibition game. So it'll be interesting to see how Willard's squad starts the day off. Make sure to obviously watch both those games because basketball season for Terps fans is very exciting.
Yeah, some of those exhibition games, we learn the people who are going to be big impacts on the team, especially for the women's team. Not quite sure. We talked about transfers in the past. Same for the men's team. Who's going to step up? Will Julian Reese be able to do that? And those exhibition games are where you learn who you are as a team. And even the first couple of preseason, early season games when you don't really, the competition's not that strong, and so you can kind of
Yeah, you can experiment. Yeah, exactly.
And then just one quick note. We were talking earlier with volleyball about like coaches and building culture and all that. I think Willard, I was looking at the 24/7 sports recruiting rankings earlier today. For next year, the Terps have the 10th best recruiting class so far. He's pulled through 4 4-star recruits so far. 3, my bad.
Yeah, 3 4-stars. And 2 from Maryland.
So he's doing a great job of like getting homegrown recruits, something that people have criticized Turgeon about in the past for not doing that.
Right. So obviously Terps fans will be on high alert for those games, but a lot of good games on the football side as we turn it over to our segment.
Give us the standings, Mike.
Yeah.
All right. So at the bottom we have Sam and Brendan.
I've fallen off. So
at
I would
4,
just say that. That's so
4 and
sad.
5, and
it's a tight race. It's
a tight race still. And at the turnaround
a lot
of
of
the
weeks to
season,
go.
I mean, you
Late
want to talk about a
season
guy
comeback.
relying on vibes. This is just absolute.
Is he in the
baloney.
wait?
Vibes are high.
He's not in the lead, is he?
He's not in the lead.
Thank God.
But he started off 0-2-1, and he's turned his season around now. He's 4-4-1.
You got to respect
So
it.
you
also,
gotta
I
respect
still
the performance
love
by
the
Cavit
tie-
Ireland
the
so
tie
far.
record.
Cavit collecting
Mid-season
cash.
rebuild.
And then, Big Mike in the lead, 6-3.
There's no way you just referred to yourself in the
All
phone.
right, Mike. with all that being said, let's hear your picks.
I'll start it. So my first pick is going to be Tennessee underdogs by 8.5 at Georgia. You're telling me that the best
That's gonna be a
offense
game.
in college football, led by their Heisman Trophy candidate QB, is going to be dogs than more than a touchdown? I'm going to take that any day.
Dogs. Get it, Georgia?
I get it, Sam. Very silly.
Next up, I got LSU underdogs by 13.5 versus Alabama. Alabama's not the same dominant Alabama team that we've seen in the past. Of course.
Yeah, like you said, I don't think they're that dominant team, especially on the road, Mike.
We also know that they had that Tennessee loss, and then it's a night game at Tiger Stadium. The crowd will be crazy, and I think it's going to be closer than the experts think. Last, I got Ohio State favored by 38 points at Northwestern. Ohio State just has a dominant offense this year. They've scored 40 or more points in 7 of their games so far this season, including all 5 of their Big Ten games. And then on the flip side, Northwestern is just terrible. I have no idea what Coach Fitzgerald is doing up there. They're 1-7 and giving up over 400 yards a game.
I hope Pat
They
doesn't
have-
When
listen
they
to
are
this
led by a
pod.
defensive head coach. I mean, how do you have a defense that bad when you're led by him?
I don't
It
know,
just
Mike.
doesn't make sense.
It's a great question.
Northwestern is very good in Ireland, though. We did learn that.
We apologize to any Pat Fitzgerald
Lovers.
enthusiasts
If
out
you're
there.
a fan of Pat, I'm sorry, but he's not doing his job
We
right
already
now.
got in trouble for ripping on Scott Frost, so maybe we should chill on Pat. But anyway, Brendan, going to your picks. Yet again, you are relying on UMass.
Nah, you stole my thunder there. I would like UConn.
Minutemen.
Right there.
Many men.
Oh, God. We're going to get copyrighted. What the heck? Okay,
Whoa.
UConn minus
Sounded too real.
Brian Robinson.
15.5 against UMass. UConn has had a somewhat successful season by UConn standards. They're 4-5. UMass is 1-7. UConn historical rivalry.
That's a rivalry?
One of the biggest rivalries in sport.
Oh, put that over the
I'm sorry.
Patriots.
I would say Duke UNC,
No, you've
Michigan,
never heard of
Ohio.
it?
UMass UConn. I'm riding once again against UMass.
Oh.
Big time rivalry up in Newport.
Newport.
That's where you're from, right?
No, Newton. That's okay. Let's keep
Newton,
going.
close enough. That's
It was close enough. All right. Next game, back to the Big Ten. Maybe this will make Sam happy. Michigan minus 26 versus Rutgers. Rutgers has not been very strong, and I think Michigan is just going to go absolutely dominate
Next
that
Mike's
game.
is going to be saying I'm from Ann Arbor.
Oh, God. And then final pick, Clemson right now, 8-0, playing Notre Dame.
Trash.
You like this pick?
I don't love that pick.
Minus 3.5 versus Notre
Yeah,
Dame.
it's not bad.
I think it's strong.
I can't get over the rivalry thing.
They're-
The only rivalry UMass has is with the win column.
Please be nice.
Oh, no, that's out of pocket to the Minutemen. Yes, I'm also going off vibes this week, trying to steal Cavit, Ireland's thunder. And so we will see how that goes. But first pick, we got Air Force and Army under these two service academies. When you're looking at a total that is ridiculously high, in my opinion, what you got is 40.5 between these two service programs. These, we all know, they run the ball, they limit possessions, they run their triple option. There's no way that they're getting up to 40.5 points. In my opinion, that's just not going to hit.
You
So I
really
like
think
the
Air
under
Force
there.
is going to run the ball? It's literally in their name. Air.
That's a really strong point, Cavit.
Very strong point. Get it? Because high point for Army. Ooh, that was good.
It's actually West Point.
Oh, that's on me. Anyway, we got another one, and we're going right in the over train as we got over in KSU in Texas, 54.5. Kansas State, their offense is starting to figure it out. Deuce Vaughn, Adrian Martinez, if he plays this week, should be high scoring. And then obviously we know about Texas, Quinn Ewers, Xavier Worthy. Great connection there. So I like the over in that one, 54.5, and a classic Big 10 or Big 12 throwdown. And then lastly, former Maryland opponent I don't like this week. Houston +3 versus SMU. If I was a betting man, I'd throw the money line on Houston. I think Houston's starting to figure it out. SMU, Rashad Reese, obviously a stud wide receiver, and Tanner Mordecai, good quarterback. Still don't like the Mustangs in this one. Houston +3. That's a 3-0
Much
week.
better pronunciation from the first episode. Good fix.
That's what I do.
I would also like to say, you said you were going off vibes and then proceeded to give like an in-depth analysis of each of the picks.
That's not how that
So-
works.
Silence.
I guess I'm not off vibes.
You think you know me?
Is this the ad? What is this?
Oh, we're getting copyrighted this episode.
Just turn that off. Good God.
Nothing like the Edge's theme song from WWE to get us going. First pick, Kentucky -1 versus Mizzou. Why not? Second pick, Iowa +3.5 versus Purdue. Fun fact, Slipknot is from Iowa. Third pick, Virginia Tech -3. The Battle of the Techs. Georgia Tech's
Oh,
going down.
I
The
love
Rambling Wreck is nothing but a
The
mess.
Battle of the Techs, baby.
Virginia Tech -3, and that's what we have.
All right. That was an incredible session of picks. Moving on to the end of the episode. Terrific Terrapin. Let's give one more round of applause to Scott McBrien. Hell of an interview. And with all that in mind, Cavit.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Under the Shell, presented by Terrapin Sports Central. It's been a pleasure, and as always, enjoy the rest of your month.